Tino whakahirehere I tēnei wā. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā no tātou katoa. Mr. Speaker, this is the last bill and last kaupapa Māori initiative in the House for this year. So before I talk about a few things that I need to talk about, which are incredibly important for Te Ao Māori, and I want to acknowledge our team who've come in here, our crew from Ngāti Rehia, in particular the chair, Kipa Munro, who's done a terrific job in terms of soldiering this through. Mihi nui kia koe e te rangatira I kōkiri tēnei kaupapa. Mihi nui kia koe, my old friend Nora Ramaka, who was a very staunch unionist in years gone by, till she became a clear activist with her iwi. And we never forget those union days, Mr. Speaker, in terms of what her whānau's done. And our judge who joins us here today, good to have her here, who I appointed. So good to have you here. Good to have you here, Judge, to Judge Alana, who's here for this kaupapa. I was listening to some of the kōrero and some excellent kōrero today. They're so, and the good thing about this is that we as a parliament can move together on this kaupapa. That's one thing that we can move together on, you know. But a kaupapa, it's ironic, as Adrian Rudolph said, we go for years and years and years, we don't even get an apology and we don't even get a pūtea. What are you doing, Judge? You know, it's we need some sort of recognition here of the trials and tribulations that some of the people go through. It's so much cost. And that's why I mihi to these individuals who've done so much. And I'll say to the Minister Goldsmith over there, who we regularly debate, Mr. Speaker, every week, and he thinks he outpoints me. Well done in terms of continuing the work that Andrew Little did, in terms of continuing the work that Chris Finlayson has done, and it's great we move to this position, Mr. Speaker. But for our people, as I've said before, and I'll say again, in terms of treaty bills and these type of kaupapa, we move these bills and we move these initiatives off the back of a government that is continually attacking Māori rights. And that's the problem, Mr. Speaker. And I talked about Mr. Seymour, the Ngāti Rehia whanaunga today, and I cannot leave the House this year without talking about some of the attacks on Māori in terms of the last bill of the year, Mr. Speaker. And I know it seems a bit out for some people, but well, no, it's appropriate because you're talking about a party that's brought in the Treaty Principles Bill, Mr. Speaker, that set up the biggest hikoi and protests we've seen at Parliament in history. In history, we bring this bill under the shadow of a decision from the United Nations, Mr. Goldsmith. The United Nations, who have said that there is no racial equality in Aotearoa, New Zealand, is getting worse and worse. Mr. Speaker, that decision just came out last week. And so I bring this in off the back of the bill where Kipa Munro has welcomed this bill. He says the par side has significance to the whole of Ngāpuhi and particularly Ngāti Rehia, and the hapu was looking forward to getting the site back, Mr. Speaker. But I'm sure Mr. Munro and others are feeling the pressures of this constant attack from the government. When we're talking about a Ngāpuhi settlement today, Mr. Speaker. That's the hope. Whether I don't know whenever Ngāpuhi's going. Willow Jean Prime might know, but we'll never know when Ngāpuhi's going to settle. But this has been this is an initial move, but it's very hard to settle when you have a government constantly attacking. We've had the Treaty Settlements Bill, the Treaty Principles Bill, we've had the Regulatory Standards Bill, Mr. Speaker. We've had the Marine Coastal Bill. We've had the Fast Track Bill. It is constant. And so when you have the pressures hovering over you all the time, it's a tribute to this Parliament that we're able to get this type of bill through. It's a tribute to this Parliament. And so it was good to see Winston Peters and Shane Jones and coming in here, and particularly Shane, of course, who can give us a terrific dialogue in terms of whakapapa. No one better in the House, Mr. Speaker, no doubt about that. No doubt about that, but I have to remind my old friend that we need support in terms of fast track. We need acknowledgement in terms of tikanga Māori with regards to fast track. That has been factored out. We need acknowledgement, Willow Jean Prime needs acknowledgement and support in terms of Te Reo Māori, which has been factored out now in terms of the boards of trustees, Mr. Speaker. I ask today, when will this stop? When will this stop? On the last day of our term, when we rightfully put forward a beautiful settlement in terms of kororipo pā and the return, the question has to be, will the government wake up during election year, or will this continue? So I put that on the table today, and so I will not apologise for bringing it to the attention of the House. I will not apologise for reminding our friends from Ngāti Rehia that one of the big debates in this House was the use of the very word Aotearoa, Mr. Speaker. Aotearoa, where we had one of our most respected leaders questioning the relevance of the name of this country. And so I put that on the House today, but congratulate everyone for moving this bill through, for moving this kaupapa through. A kaupapa that reminds New Zealanders that we can work together. That we can work together with ministers of different backgrounds, and where injustices, we will recognise it, we will support it. But the fight in terms of Māori, in terms of kaupapa Māori, is a fight that, and is a challenge that this Parliament must embrace over the next 12 months, or otherwise, Mr. Speaker, we might see another hikoi of the proportions that we had last year. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Tu Ngāti Rehia, kia tātou katoa, meri kirihimete me ngā mihi o te tauhou, kia tātou katoa.
Rima Nakley.
Mr. Speaker, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I left my office probably around 12:37 a.m. this morning because I was in the office reflecting on how momentous this day is, Mr. Speaker. And as much as I'd like to respond to some of the comments made just before me, I won't, because I want to focus on this important, colossal kaupapa that is such an important and beautiful day in our history that I'm proud to be standing up, and privileged rather, to be standing up and adding some thoughts amongst the thoughts that were conveyed today. I want to welcome Ngāti Rehia and Ngāpuhi into the House. I want to say thank you. Thank you for your genuine, authentic, beautiful manaakitanga that you showed us when we were up there in Yorohe. It's like many of my colleagues have said, it's indeed unforgettable. What's that song? Unforgettable. But it really was. So thank you very much. This bill, Mr. Speaker, the Koriripo Pā vesting bill, it essentially does one thing quite clearly and quite deliberately. It vests Koriripo Pā in the trust that's going to be a guardian of the land, of the pā site, for the greater people of Ngāpuhi. And what we're doing here today is one of those technical things where we're giving legal effect to an agreement that's already been entered into by the Crown, but it's important that this legal effect takes place so that then the party that you guys are organising up there in the gallery can also take place. And the real guardianship, well, it has been. You've been taking care of it for so long, but on paper, it can take effect, because this is land that's been disputed for a very long time, Mr. Speaker, in history. That dispute was consistent and unresolved for generations. And I'm really quietly pleased that today this bill resolves finally the status of the land, not in a way that it rewrites history, but in a way that it responds and corrects to history. Mr. Speaker, we've heard a lot about what the details of this bill are, but what I'd like to do is I'd like to fast forward a bit to the last couple of months. As we heard, the Māori Affairs Select Committee, we tried successfully, very hard, to make sure that this bill will pass this year, because it was very important to our Minister, Minister Goldsmith. It was very important to the Minister Potaka, and indeed it was very important to our Prime Minister, from the conversations that I was blessed to be privy to, that it's very important that we pass this year. Bless you. I want to say that when I learnt that the meaning of koreripopa, one of the meanings of koreripo is swirling waters, I remember a conversation I had with the Honourable Marama Davidson when we were on another trip, and she explained the word mokopuna and how essentially broken up it means blueprint and a spring of water, and how our children are the blueprint of our tupuna, of their tupuna, and it continues. And I thought about how beautiful it is that waters, swirling waters and mokopuna come into play today, because I know with our Māori brothers and sisters that your mokopuna is essentially the reason, the drive and the end which justifies your means over and over with a lot of your mahi, including this kaupapa today. I found that quite beautiful. I want to acknowledge our kuia that's sitting up there today. Nora, thank you very much again for your beautiful gentility, but also your strength, your perseverance and your endurance. And I want to also thank you, Kipa Munro, Aranga Tira in your own right, for what you shared with us that day when we were in your rohe. And you know, they say that the kumara does not speak of its own sweetness, but I hope the Ngāpuhi Tupuna can make an exception today, because you deserve recognition for how much the role that you've played in getting us to where we are today. Others paint a picture, Mr. Speaker, when we're on a piece of land, but Kipa Munro constructed the picture for us, so that those of us that were there, my colleagues and I, could truly imagine, envisage, feel and understand the magnitude of the Koreripo past sites with the terraces and the plethora of homes that once existed there. And Mr. Speaker, there was a lot of conversation back and forth about what this vesting bill means in terms of a settlement for Ngāpuhi. And all I'd like to say is this. I hope that this bill is a seed for a tree that grows into that long-awaited settlement for Ngāpuhi. And the tree could be either, the seed could either grow into a rimu, slow-growing, with medicinal qualities for the heart, or it could be a manuka that's fast-growing, but the medicinal qualities are astounding. And I hope the seed is a manuka. I commend this bill to the House.
The question is that the motion be agreed to. Those of that opinion will say aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it.
Te pere whakahoki I koreripopa vesting bills, third reading.
Now, I understand we will have a waiata. Kia ora. Members, we come now to debate on the quality of life for ageing New Zealanders, arranged by the Business Committee under Standing Order 80. Would some honourable member care to move that the House take note of the quality of life for ageing New Zealanders?
Mr. Speaker, I so note, and it is an honour to be able to stand and speak on the first speech on the quality of life for ageing New Zealanders. And this is absolutely something that all members of this House and across New Zealand will be interested in making sure that we get right, because we all have loved ones that are elderly. We ourselves will hopefully be elderly one day, and it's in everyone's best interest that we can act in a bipartisan manner to make people of age live with dignity and respect, and in a way that's also manageable and sustainable for the government. And I was reflecting as I was thinking about this that, if you bear me some minor indulgence, Mr. Speaker, that I'm going into a Christmas with ageing parents and ageing father, and he's in a retirement village, and I want to make sure that I spend as much time as I can with him over these coming holidays, because you never know, Mr. Speaker, when they may not be there anymore. Look, the government is very serious about making sure that New Zealanders age well, and you've seen a number of announcements in this space recently. We want an integrated approach to reform the aged care system. The recent announcement of a ministerial advisory group will take a non-political, independent approach to making sure that we can develop mechanisms to best address and best suit what is needed. And there are three key areas that the Ministerial Advisory Group will look at. Firstly, the funding models to support sustainable services and the sustainable supply of aged care beds. Also, how the costs of providing aged care can be reasonably shared between those receiving the care and the government. And thirdly, the changes needed to support cohesion and integration between aged care services and health services, and between aged care services and the disability sector. Ensuring a sustainable supply of aged care beds is critical to ensuring that all New Zealanders have the care they need as they age. The recommendations from the expert Ministerial Advisory Group are expected in mid-2026, with changes to the funding model to be implemented in 2027. So there's significant policy implications and considerations, and they will shape future government's recommendations. We also need a system that responds and recognises that most New Zealanders do want to age at home if they can, where feasible. So to enable that to happen and to move between the different layers of care as they need it is essential to ensuring that we can fulfil that. And we have had a lot of challenges regarding, we have an ageing demographic. There is no way to get past the fact that we have a significantly higher proportion of New Zealanders over 65 years of age, and that is expected to continue, or will continue into the future, and with a relatively low proportion of New Zealanders of working age. So the implications to the state are going to be considerable. With advances in healthcare and nutrition, people are also living longer, which adds a further dimension. And we are also seeing a number of additional New Zealanders living with dementia, which places more complex needs on our aged care system. But around those funding improvements, there was a recent announcement that the aged residential care sector would receive a 4% uplift. So that will see a total uplift or increase of 96 million this year, coupled with an additional 44 million for the home, community and support services. So bringing in additional funding of 140 million. And this is on top of the 129 million from the previous year. So all up very close to 270 million over that 2-year period. And these funding increases are aimed at relieving pressure that's on the sector and improving care services for New Zealanders, in the short term while we work on those longer term pieces that will come through that ministerial advisory group recommendations. So essentially fixing the basics, Mr. Speaker, and building the future. And that is something that we are very focused to do. There's also been an announcement of case mix model in the South Island that will be rolled out throughout the South Island, which we believe is a move away from task-based providers paid by the hour for specific tasks to a more flexible care arrangements in which are more responsive to the needs that people face. We believe that this new service model will deliver better care with a focus on keeping people as independent as long as possible. We have heard a lot about the number of people living in retirement villages. I have a father who lives in one with his partner, and I was there recently, and they have a very good quality of life there. But it's fair to say that not all New Zealanders enjoy that quality of life. And we know that there are a number of New Zealanders who reach the age of 65 with very limited superannuation savings. They may not have a property that they own. They are then out of a workforce, and with a number of years left to sustain themselves, and not necessarily the means to do so. And we need to address a lot of those issues. There are some significant long-term structural challenges for New Zealand to face in that regard. We have heard a lot of concerns from people living in retirement villages around the conditions there, or the inequities or the unfairness, and there was a recent announcement by Ministers Costello and Potaka in reviewing the Retirement Villages Act, which was an agreement, coalition agreement between New Zealand First and the National Party. And some of the key improvements to come out of that are a process for former residents to apply for early access to funds in specific circumstances, interest being paid after 6 months if a unit remains unlicensed, repayment of funds no later than 12 months when a unit is vacated. And we heard some stories from very distressed family members when a loved one had left a village, a retirement village, and the unit was not sold for a number of years. People want closure in these circumstances, and their estate and their families want to move on. And also stopping the quite insidious practice of charging fees and deductions to a resident who is no longer with us and no longer at the village. This bill is expected to be taken to Parliament mid-next year, and then we'll go through the select committee process. I also want to make mention of the work the Health Committee did, the inquiry into aged care sector, current and future capacity to provide services to people with experienced neurological cognitive disorders, and I can see a number of members from the committee here across the House. Thank you all for your participation. It was wonderful that we had a report that we were able to bring back to the House that had unanimous support. And thank you for everyone for your contributions into that. We made a number of visits up and down the country to a variety of aged care facilities. And we came out with 14 recommendations, and some of the key ones were around increasing the transparency of funding, looking at a range of incentives to ensure that providers can build or are able to build or incentivised to build the facilities that are required, the development of more dementia beds, where there's currently some real financial struggles for providers around providing those. Changes to encourage flexibility in the home, community and support services contracting so they can perform a range of tasks with a holistic view to keep people out of hospital and keep them well. And also looking at some of the longer term contracting and national consistency in the HCSS provider framework, and setting up regular respite care program. Look, there are a number of recommendations there, and I believe the government will consider them duly. Obviously there's funding challenges and other considerations that need to take place, but I just want to once again acknowledge Health Committee members from around the House for their participation in that. think I've covered all the major pieces that I want to, Mr. Speaker, but I just want to reiterate how important it is that we take a long-term bipartisan approach to this, that we fix what's in front of us right now, and that we are able to build the systems that we need for the future to enable all New Zealanders to age with dignity and respect, and appreciating that there will be cultural variances and challenges throughout New Zealand that also need to be factored in and addressed. But we can do this in a bipartisan and collegial manner and make sure that we deliver for the long-term challenges that we have in this area. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Now I understand there's a 5-minute split call. Ingrid Leary.
There was a headline from my own electorate of Tairi published by the Otago Daily Times on the 31st of August, and that headline said everything we need to know about this broad debate, quality of life for ageing New Zealanders. The headline said, quality of life dropping for Otago seniors, survey. And Mr. Speaker, that wasn't a slogan, that was a warning. And the survey found that about 2/3 of Otago seniors reported a clear decline in their quality of life. And that decline was caused by the cost of living, health costs, and mobility costs. And most concerning was that almost 1 in 3 said they had delayed seeking medical care because of money. 1 in 3, Mr. Speaker. Now that is not a failure of personal responsibility, that is a failure of policy. And what is happening in Otago is not an outlier. It is the same story being told right around the country. Too often, seniors are being treated as a challenge to be managed rather than an opportunity. An opportunity to honour people who raised families, who paid taxes, who built communities, who served in our defence forces, and in many cases are raising grandkids and caring for others. People who now themselves are asking whether they can afford to eat properly, whether they can heat their home, or whether many, like in my electorate, are choosing to stay in bed longer because it's warmer and cheaper. To those people, especially in Tairi, perhaps watching this debate, I want to say kia ora. I see you, Labour sees you, this speech is for you. It is a privilege, Mr. Speaker, to stand here as Labour's spokesperson for seniors, a group far too often invisible in political decision making. And I work with seniors organisations across the country, and what I hear is consistent and clear. Older New Zealanders are being asked to carry the heaviest burden in a cost of living crisis they did not create. And I feel now like I'm channeling the late, great Jo Miller from Grey Power, from my electorate as well. May she rest in peace. If she was here, she would be saying costs are rising, support is shrinking, decisions are being made about seniors, not with them. And the result is a steady erosion of independence, dignity and security. Mr. Speaker, quality of life is not an abstract concept. It is about groceries, it is about power bills, it is about transport, and it is about health care. It is about seeing a GP when you need one, whether you can get to hospital safely, whether you can stay connected to your community instead of becoming isolated. And too often what I hear from seniors is anxiety. Transport, healthcare and income security are not side issues. They are the foundations of ageing well. And that is why government choices matter, Mr. Speaker. That is why the choices of this government matter. Under Christopher Luxon, every day life has become harder for seniors, harder and more expensive. Food costs more, power bills keep rising, transport is less affordable, healthcare is harder to access, and rates are going through the roof. These are not inconveniences, they are barriers to independence. And while seniors lie awake at night worrying about rising insurance premiums and whether they will be forced to sell the homes that they worked their entire lives to save for, this government talks up their trickle-down economics. Well, how well has that gone down for them? Yesterday's financial report card shows that unless you are a multinational, a big tobacco company or a large digital platform, their economic policies are not working. Councils have been thrown under the bus regarding water reform, and meanwhile it is seniors who are picking up the tab. Then just yesterday, the government made life even harder, cutting discounted public transport for disabled New Zealanders and doing that during a cost of living crisis. How out of touch is that, Mr. Speaker? Many seniors are disabled and this directly affects them. Under Christopher Luxon, disabled people, including seniors, will now pay more just to get to their healthcare appointments. Labor has an alternative. We will ring-fence every cent of the targeted capital gains tax for health, delivering a Medicare card and 3 free GP visits. Mr Chair, I want to briefly respond to points raised by Sam Uffindale regarding the retirement villages changes that his government has made. In effect, they are short-term. They create a 2-tier system and they make people still wait for up to 12 months for their capital repayment. That is why I have a members' bill that fixes that, and I was pleased that earlier this year Mr Uffindale supported my bill. Mr Chair, this debate is about what kind of country we want to be.
A point of order, Sam Uffindale.
Member has incorrectly asserted a statement to me. I did not support her bill. I said we take good ideas wherever they may come from, and there were some good ideas, but I did not support her bill.
A genuine debating point, Mr Uffindale, and you may even like to mention that to one of your fellow speakers. But,
Point of order, Mr Speaker. May I have the last 20 minutes of my speech, given that the clock wasn't stopped?
well,
20 seconds.
Actually, given that the member has read her speech, no, I won't. She's an experienced member, so and I can encourage others who are going to be participating in this debate, please don't read speeches. But you have 10 seconds.
Speaker, Labor sees you seniors, we respect you, we want you to have great lives.
Honourable Aisha Verfel.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. When we talk about the quality of life of older people in New Zealand, we are talking about respect. Respect for people who built this country, who paid their taxes, who raised families, and who have contributed to their community over decades. But what we are seeing from Christopher Luxon's government is not respect, it is neglect. Christopher Luxon promised to fix the economy, but instead it has gone backwards. As we heard yesterday, the financial situation is dire because of their unfunded tax cuts. And let's remember, how much did older New Zealanders get out of those tax cuts? How much were the tax cuts worth to a superannuitant? $3. Not even enough for a loaf of bread in Christopher Luxon's economy. And what is the price of those tax cuts been to New Zealanders? Well, it has been cuts to services, cuts that have sent our economy backwards and has meant that the services seniors need and deserve are harder than ever to reach. Nowhere is this more apparent than in the health system. And just today in the paper, information the government didn't want you to know, released to me in written parliamentary questions, another $510 million of cuts to health services up and down the country. These cuts are making it harder to access care, and in particular, general practice care. Visiting a GP is harder now than ever. Here is what someone wrote to me. A superannuitant wrote to me, my doctor's fees has increased to $75. I have cancelled 3 appointments in the last month because I cannot afford to see the doctor. I am a 73-year-old retired grandma with asthma, diabetes and high blood pressure. I desperately need the coalition to do something about our health system, or else for myself and more people will die before our time. Mr Speaker, when you cannot access a general practitioner or your same general practitioner, your continuity of care suffers. And at that stage of life, in your latter years, when many people do have multiple conditions, general practice care is exactly what you need. Failing to provide this is not good medicine, and it is not good government. It is the same story across the country and across multiple health services. Ambulance call-outs, a lifeline for many seniors, have gone up from $100 to $125 in the last year. Hospice services are being scaled back, for example, in Northland. Access to home support is being scaled back, and people are getting less care that they need to live independently. And aged care facilities, as our committee has heard, are crying out for more resources and more staff. Mr Speaker, this is what happens when a weak government panders to big tobacco rather than the people who need them to care for them. Our country is going backwards under Christopher Luxon. He is making it harder and more expensive to see a doctor or a nurse, to get ambulance care, scans and x-rays. And Labour has a plan to fix this for everyone. In a country where everyone can get ahead, afford the basics, including good health care. We will provide every New Zealander with a Medicare card that will give them access to 3 free general practice visits. That is the basis of excellent health care, and every strong health system in the country has strong access to primary care as its foundation. That is the alternative. Make no mistake, this election is make or break for our health system, and the people jeering over there better pay attention, because this is, everyone knows that the National Party has cut and cut and cut, and it is our seniors who are struggling and paying the price. They don't like to hear this over there. They don't like to hear this.
Ms Verrill, in your time left, could you just come back to the elderly part of this, please?
Oh, Mr Speaker, of course, access to care is of considerable significance to older New Zealanders. They face greater barriers when accessing health care because of the price and their fixed incomes. So Labour makes no apologies for siding with older New Zealanders and those struggling with the cost of living and making sure health care is accessible to all.
Dr. Lawrence Zunan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The issue of seniors is a serious one, and I want to talk over all previous speakers have said that this is something that we should look carefully, seriously, with a long-term goal that is non-partisan. This is what we've heard this morning from the Retirement Commission. The reason for that is simple, because we are seeing a drastic increase in our seniors population. By 2050, the number of over 65 will increase by 50%. We're currently sitting at roughly 900,000 of people over the age of 65. The number of people who are over the age of 85 will also drastically increase. In the latest report by the Retirement Commissioner, we see that 44% are feeling exposed in terms of their daily living. 16.8% over the age of 65 are in poverty, which is higher than the OECD average of 14.2%. We see home ownership going down from 83% to 71% currently. We're seeing still the number of people over the age of 65 with mortgages at 13%. 13% of our over 65 are currently renting, and that is projected to go up to 40%, or 600,000 people in 2040. So, Mr. Speaker, this is a serious concern, and this is a concern that should be shared by everyone. We are seeing some changes, and we're seeing movements. We're seeing the creation of the New Zealand Super Fund, the Kiwi Savers, which has helped this drastically, and that was something supported by the government and by the parties in government at the time unanimously, because this is the sort of vision that we should be having if we want to address this issue. And this issue is not isolated to Aotearoa, New Zealand. It is a global issue we're facing. However, I will say it is disappointing to see in the latest report that seniors in terms of subsidies for public transport has been reduced from 75% to 65%. And the rationale was given is we didn't anticipate the usage. We didn't anticipate the number of people. But I thought that would have been a good thing. But the point is that any government should be able to look at this and going, it's a good thing that disabled people and seniors are using our public transport, because the ability to get around and the freedom of movement is a fundamental right for anyone, and that includes our disabled whānau, that includes our seniors whānau. So I would ask the government to seriously consider reverting that reduction. We're also seeing that in the work and retirement study found that a third of older people living in a community at risk of malnutrition, rising to 50% for older Māori. 93% entering age residential care were malnourished or at risk of malnutrition. We're seeing 28% of over 65 buying less food, 28% put off medical treatment. We're seeing that the rejection rate for food grants, for hardship food grants by MSD for over the age of 65 rising, tripling from 3% to a peak of 10.2%. From December 2024. These are serious concerns, Mr. Speaker, because what we are seeing here is that the people over the age of 65 are unable to meet the very basic human rights to housing, to health, to nutritious food. There are obviously other things that the previous speaker, Sam Affendale, the chair of House Select Committee, also mentioned from the residential care sector, from the retirement village sector, from home and community care sector, but there simply isn't enough time within 5 minutes to even address the concerns there. Seniors thrive in all diversities and with dignity and autonomy in vibrant intergenerational communities. That is the vision that the Green Party have for seniors. This is why in our Green Party budget, we are seeing for seniors free GP, not simply 3 visit, free GP in general, free dental care, scale up dedicated funding for care, and also scale up public housing supply with universal design. These are the things that our future communities, the generations of future seniors and over 65 and 85s will need, and we are asking for your support on this.
Mr. Speaker. The Honourable Brooke Van Velden.
Mr. Speaker, it's a real pleasure to rise this morning on behalf of the ACT Party to take a call on this debate on the quality of life of ageing New Zealanders. And I must firstly acknowledge the irony of being the youngest ACT member and the youngest member of Cabinet talking about ageing New Zealanders. And now, as far as I'm aware, I've been in this place for 8 years now, and I'm yet to discover a grey hair on my head. So it's not about me, but it is about other people around the country. And I'll tell you where I meet quite a few people who are ageing in our community, and that's by being the MP for Tamaki. I go around our community a lot, and I encounter so many wonderful older New Zealanders who have a huge wealth of knowledge and a respect for our community, and I really thank them for the support that they give me personally as well. You know, I've encountered many of our older members of the Tamaki community who in some ways have called me their surrogate granddaughter, and I know it's been very, very sweet, but I know it's meant with a lot of love and respect. And I've met some remarkable Kiwis, people who are at Holocaust memorial events, wanting to dedicate the past, people at retirement villages engaging in political debate, or people who have been at dementia care units, as well as people who have given up 20 years of service as JPs in their community. It's really wonderful. But, Madam Speaker, I believe it is one of the best times ever to be an ageing New Zealander. It is better than so many years of the past because we have people who are living longer than ever. We have so many new exciting medicines constantly being innovated. We have access to new technology and new modes of transport. You know, we have really exciting technological advances happening in things like dementia care, where I've talked to people who are looking at studying eye movements and just the shuddering around an eye to determine whether or not they are over-medicating people who have dementia, because they can actually under-medicate now or get the specifications right, because the new technology is allowing these people to have more information about how to genuinely care rather than medicate people in dementia care. So it's really exciting stuff. And also for family, we've got video calls. You know, in the past where you didn't have access to new forms of technology, you were more isolated from some members of the community. And In some instances, there is some forms of loneliness in the community, and I put on a lot of community events in Tamaki to ensure that we have people who have access to knowledge and learning and political debate. But there are good things that this government is doing to ensure that these people who are older in our communities have even better lives. And we've brought on new planning and development reforms for granny flats so that people don't have to be isolated in old age. They can actually live right by their family, just next door in the backyard. I think that's wonderful. We've seen this government invest more than ever in modern medicines. We've seen the breast cancer screening age increase to 74 so that older Kiwis have more access to treatment and care. And there are some areas, though, where I think we're going to see even more exciting progress with innovation on the way, so that as people are losing the ability to walk as much as they may have done in the past, we're seeing new AI and we're seeing new automated movement devices that will allow people to continue walking. And I think this is really, really quite astounding. And so we don't have to be like the opposition, which is all doom and gloom about what does the future look like. The future is exciting. It's so exciting about how people can age well.
Don't bring the speaker into the debate, Mr. Davidson.
Age well in their own homes with modern technology, age well in retirement villages, and age well in granny flats. There is still some more that we can do, though. We know that for some more vulnerable members of the community, it is confusing for them to read the contracts that they're signing when they're going into retirement villages. And I think some of the work that this government is doing to try and streamline the rights for people in retirement villages is really exciting, because we know that there are some more vulnerable people who do need a little bit more help there. But we can get the settings right for development. We can keep investing in technology. We can keep investing in Farmac. And we can make sure that we've got all of our government settings right, so that there is the ability for new exciting technology and innovation for ageing New Zealanders. Thank you.
Honourable Casey Costello.
Madam Speaker, I am absolutely thrilled to be able to take a call in this important debate as a New Zealand First member and on behalf of my party, who has an unrivalled record of delivering a better quality of life for older New Zealanders. We have introduced and will continue to introduce the practical solutions that ensure that our older New Zealanders live a great life as they age, and that they continue to ensure that New Zealand is a wonderful place to grow old in. First and foremost, protecting the age of superannuation is a bottom line position for New Zealand First and part of our coalition agreement. We are increasingly put under pressure to raise the age of superannuation entitlement. But the reality is, Madam Speaker, is that we spend approximately 5% of our GDP on superannuation, and that is considerably less than the OECD average of 8%. That sum ensures that every single New Zealander is guaranteed a minimum income in their age. And that is a simple, relatively straightforward system that is internationally revered as a good solution for the system that we have in New Zealand. And of course, that is a blunt measure of the GDP percentage and quota, because it doesn't actually reflect that what that number does in terms of the contribution that our older New Zealanders make to our society as a whole. We have to acknowledge that many over 65s continue in employment because they choose to, not because they have to. They own businesses, they drive our sports clubs, they deliver voluntary services, they support our working parents looking after their grandchildren, they mentor, they coach, they inspire, they create. That is what our over 65s deliver for New Zealand. They are not a problem we need to solve. They are an opportunity for us to be a better country. But it is not just superannuation that New Zealand First has delivered on. As part of this government, we have increased the rates rebate scheme for all super gold card holders. Again, a token towards this cost of living pressures. The Select Committee inquiry, which has been a really important process to really delve into our system and what it needs. We have expanded housing opportunities to give better solutions, not just anecdotes and narratives, but actually something practical around the 70 square metre subsidiary dwellings to support multi-generational living, to support the utopia that the Green Party was talking about, that I'm not quite sure how we're going to pay for, because no worker's going to be able to retire with the taxes they're going to have to pay to meet that system. We have launched the Better Later Life Action Plan, and the action plan is important because it delivers all of those supporting functions that allows New Zealanders to live well. It is about connecting societies better. It is about legal protections. It is about housing solutions. It is about how we ensure that there is a quality of life. And let's not forget what this government has done for law and order. Because if you want to age with quality and dignity in New Zealand, you need to feel safe and secure. And I know only too well that when you're an older person as a victim of crime, those impacts are devastating. It isolates you from society. It sometimes even estranges you from your own home. We are going to continue to live it, Madam Speaker. We have an ageing population, as I said, of about 900,000 over 65s in New Zealand. But the reality is, despite this narrative, over 85% of that 900,000 actually are not dependent on the health system. They are living independently and they are living well. This is the point that we need to make. We are living longer, but we are living well. We have also introduced the Ministerial Advisory Group to ensure that we have a review of the aged care system, not as Labor did, just appoint an aged care commissioner, but actually redesign the system, actually ensure we have a sustainable system in the future. The reality is, Madam Speaker, in this country, we all sit underneath the shade of a tree planted by someone who lived before us, and we owe that dignity. And New Zealand First will ensure that we protect the family so that we can have strong families, so that we can be accountable to our own futures. We can also be accountable to the people we owe our life to. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Debbie Naru-Peka.
Tēnā koe te peka. I rise today in honour of our kaumātua, our elderly, those grandparents who were fortunate to raise us, who were part of intergenerational living, certainly in my village, that's where I've come from, the aunties and uncles that are part of our everyday life, the way that they were able to look after not only us as a whānau, the extended whānau and the wider community. I mihi to all of those volunteers that are out there that would make sure that church would look good, that the marae would look good, that the gardens of everyone else that couldn't garden would look great, that the sports clubs, the coaching, the refereeing, the judging would always be happening. And I guess, you know, you take for granted that type of dignity and forever giving to us. And it comes at a time when, you know, we've looked at some of this report and the detail that it brings out, and it would be great to say that all have future-proofed themselves to be able to live with the dignity that they deserve, with the private health insurances and the asset base that they need. But that isn't the case for every kaumātua, because many spent their life not only working and paying taxes, but actually contributing to the society that we live in today. And I want to also mihi that there is an obligation, not that they put on me, that I feel an obligation to not only what they contributed to making us who we are today, but how we have that reciprocated love to look after the next generation in the same way that they did with us. So when we see a report that says that not all of our elderly, in fact nearly 4 in 10, said their quality of life has declined in just the past 2 years. 1 in 4 seniors in this country are now living with poor quality of life. And the biggest pressure are not luxuries, are not the fact that they want to eat fish once a week or they'd like to have a piece of steak. It is the cost of living, the healthcare costs, the healthcare access, the housing and financial security. And this is on all of us. This is on all of us to acknowledge that this isn't a personal failure, this is a policy failure. And when the report shows that 41% of our kaumātua say that health and aged care system is not at all culturally fit for them, this again is on all of us to decide indeed what the opportunities are and how we make this phase of their life something that doesn't make them feel like a burden on society, but in fact a taonga, because I was raised in a culture where our kaumata are indeed taonga, just as our mokopuna are. And so I think we have to talk about equity and how we dismantle and remove the barriers for our kaumata, for our elderly, and how we make sure that it's quietly done in a way that doesn't make the kaumata, the elderly, their families feel that the burden has shifted onto them. And there have been some really good research and ideas for us all to consider of what that could look like. And it could look like us being able to scale up in the community support, whether that be marae, whether that be whānau ora, whether that be community-led in-home care models. Some of the support and research has shown that we need to pay whānau carers properly. It is indeed an honour to look after kaumata, but it also has a financial obligation that we could be doing, and unpaid care is popping up in broken systems. I think retrofitting homes for safety and to make sure that accessibility and that investment for them to be able to live well is something that we could be talking about and creating policy around. I think also fixing healthcare access for seniors, so they're guaranteed free primary care and prescriptions for over 65, yes, with equity weighting, and reduce wait times, investing in workforce. I know this isn't new to many of us in the House, but public capacity, not privatisation. I think tackling loneliness as an infrastructure is something that was really hard to read, and I have seen that in my own community, and how we fund community connectors, whether that be a transport, whether that be the churches, whether that be marae, but treat transport and digital access and social participation as health determinants. These are some ideas. What I would hate us to do is to debate the opportunities and the solutions, because we do have an ageing population and they deserve us to all work together in dignity with respect that they have bestowed into all of us. And I do hope that we are looking at our elderly and kaumata who are not good at asking for charity, and we front foot with what solid policy as a nation that looks after all its citizens, particularly its kaumata, its elderly, would look like. Kia ora.
Hamish Campbell.
Madam Speaker, it is an absolute honour to rise and speak in this debate, and I do just want to acknowledge the speech that just preceded me and the thoughtfulness that it was delivered with, because, Madam Speaker, ageing well is not something that's political. It is something that we should have a bipartisan approach to. Yeah. Growing old is a privilege. Some of us won't make old bones, and we think of those loved ones who haven't made it to old age, and we acknowledge their passing early. Luckily, of course, age and life expectancy is increasing here in New Zealand. For Māori, it's gone up 3.1 years. For non-Māori, between 1.5 and 1.6 years. And I do just want to acknowledge all the great medical researchers up and down this country that are contributing to that and helping that happens. Living longer is also about living better, and we've heard that not every 900,000 persons over 65 is dependent on the healthcare system. And I think as I move around my electorate, the many great interactions that I have with that age group. It's about living well, it's about living better, it's about living with independence, dignity, connection, and real choice about how and where we live. And this matters to all of us and to all our families. We all probably have parents, maybe even grandparents, and I'll acknowledge my parents in their mid-80s that may be considered in this category. Of course, it is something that New Zealand does have to face. We are an ageing nation. As has been already mentioned, there's 900,000 people over the age of 65 now. That's projected to be over 2 million by the year 2070. But the good news is many of those New Zealanders are still very active, engaged, and contributing enormously to their families, their communities, and of course our economy. I love visiting the older communities in the Islay electorate, whether it's the Holly Lee, the Russley Village, Somerset at Avonhead, Bellevue, Bupa Park Zone. Always have very good interactions there. The lived experience that people can tell, the stories they can tell, they are well read, they are well educated, and they keep you on your toes. But it isn't just about retirement villages and aged care. Also recently had a visit to Bishopdale Men's Shed, where of course men's sheds help reduce social isolation, improve mental well-being and foster a sense of purpose and belonging, something that's very important in the 65 plus, especially for us males who may tend not to be overly social. They're doing amazing work in the community, building things for local community groups, local schools, and it is a way that men can get together and still be productive. But the average does hide some hard truths. For many older New Zealanders, ageing is accompanied by insecure housing, fragmented healthcare and uncertainty about their rights, particularly as they move into retirement living. And if we want people to age well, the evidence is clear. 3 things matter most. First, connection. And research and work of organisations like Age Concern consistently show that social isolation and loneliness are amongst the strongest predictors of poor health and poor outcomes. Loneliness is not just about being sad, it increases the risk of hospitalisation, cognitive decline and early death. Ageing well means engaging with local services, volunteering, working with clubs, maraes, libraries and places where older people can be visible, valued and connected. Secondly, it's health span, not just lifespan. It's ageing well is about making sure it's about preventing falls, strength and balance programs, medication reviews, hearing and vision support and timely access to primary health care. And that is why I'm so proud of this government's work to increase access to primary health care, whether it be through telehealth or training further healthcare workers to make sure we can get there. And thirdly, it is about home and place. And that is why we have been working very hard to make sure more New Zealanders can get into housing. The highest level of first home buyers in the last couple of months have been able to access housing. This is going to have a huge impact when this generation gets older. So we are delivering what matters to older New Zealanders. We're helping keep prices down. We saw an increase of inflation of over 25% under the previous government, yet in the last 3 months we've seen month-on-month decrease in food pricing. We are working on what matters, fixing the basics and building the future.
Good work, Kushla Tanari Manuel.
Tēnā koe e te māngai o te whare, o tira tēnā tātou katoa. Madam Chair, as we head into Christmas and of course the new year, a time of joy, it is also a time of reflection and sadness that I will not have my parents, my nieces and nephews and mokos won't have their nanny and papa. But it's also a time to reflect on the fact that I did have my great-grandmother until she was 101 years old, and I was raised by the village with so many pakeke to shape and mould me. And so it brings me great joy, Madam Chair, to hear that across the House we all agree that protecting and encouraging a quality of life for our pakeke, our elderly, is something that we must unite on and pursue together as a Parliament. Madam Chair, in Ikaroa Rāwhiti, this is a very pertinent topic. In Te Wairua Ho Pupu Ho Ningi Mā Tangirau, there is no aged care available. Since Cyclone Gabriel, the community has been rallying around to look at options. In other areas across Ikaroa Rāwhiti, there is less in-home care, less aged care, and a lot of our whānau actually being forced into hospital care. And I do appreciate everyone across Aotearoa who is taking care of our pakeke. They are repositories of knowledge, and where would we be without the sage advice of our kuia and karaua, whether we ask for it or not. But for those who do have the option, Madam Chair, to move into aged care, I think we need to think about what that means for the whānau and what that means for the community, because often that is not a choice made lightly. Often it's a choice made out of absolute necessity because they do not have access to the health care in rural Aotearoa where they live and where they are from and where they are an essential part of our community and our tikanga. So when people move into aged care, they are often deprived of seeing their mokopuna every day, and communities like ours are deprived of the intellectual property they take with them to sit in homes in urban areas. It's actually really, really sad. And I know I sound selfish, but that's a major taonga to extract from a community and a family. So let's talk about living well. Absolutely, I agree. Like I said, I had my nan until she was 101. She was sharp to the end and physically active to the end. Often the vision we'd see, we'd drive up, cross her cattle stop, and Nan would be sitting in her garden on her beer crate, active to the end in spite of her arthritic fingers. I did not inherit her green thumb. Anyway, so living well in rural communities is a whole other consideration that I hope we will continue to consider as a united Parliament. As I said, our whānau barely have access to quality health care, let alone aged care, let alone programs to keep them active, programs for interactivity. And so when someone goes from being a stalwart at the marae, which is an absolutely crucial contribution to our communities and our society, to sitting alone in an aged care facility, that's not living well. So how can we work together to ensure no matter where in Aotearoa you live, you can live well? We talked about flexible care, and I hope we can work on that, because voluntary care of whānau has been mentioned, and often whānau cannot be remunerated for that. And yet they are with their whānau 24/7, learning skills no son or daughter should have to learn, but they want to care for their parent or their nanny and papa, and they want to keep them at home. So papakanga developments are another option we should look at. I'm so passionate about this, Madam Chair, I could talk about it forever, but in closing, there are many people doing great work around Aotearoa, but I do want to give a shout out to Tūranga Health, one of the best kaumātua programs in Aotearoa. It's such a vibe, over 100 pakeke getting together and enjoying themselves. And to the rest of us, just remember, never resist growing old. It's a privilege, many are delight. Tēnā tātou.
Chair,
Carlos Chong.
I just want to begin by acknowledging our seniors, the people who give a lifetime of contribution to this country we proudly call home. New Zealand won't be the beautiful nation it is today without their hard work, sacrifice, and resilience. For that, we thank you. They are truly the best of the best, and they deserve nothing but the best in return. But, Mr. Speaker, the question we must ask ourselves is that in the past 20 years, have we done enough for them? Have we done enough to ensure that their later years are lived with quality, dignity, and security? Unfortunately, for many seniors across our country, the answer is no. Life can be extremely challenging for our seniors. Many face complex health issues, growing financial pressure, long waiting times for aged care service, loneliness, and in some cases, elder abuse. These challenges should concern every one of us, because how we treat our seniors reflect who we are as a society. And today, I just want to focus on two key issues: the financial burden and loneliness. During visit to retirement village and through conversation with seniors, one reality becomes very clear. How much you have saved often determines the quality of your retirement life. Financial stress should not be defining features of old age, but yet for many, it is. This is why I'm very pleased that National Party recent announcement proposing to lift the KiwiSaver contribution rate. This is a positive and a necessary steps. These changes will help ensure New Zealanders are more financially secure in retirement. Those extra savings may seem small at the beginning,
but they can make a huge difference. The difference between struggling and living with dignity, independence, and a peace of mind in later life. The second major issue repeatedly raised by seniors is loneliness. Loneliness can be just damaging as physical illness. It affects mental health, emotional well-being, and even life expectancy. Many seniors live alone, separated from families, or feel disconnected from our communities. No one who has contributed so much to our country should feel forgotten and invisible. We must do more to foster connection through community programs, accessible service, and age-friendly environments that encourage participation and belongings. I also want to use this opportunity to speak up to our ethics communities. During recent hearing, it was mentioned that the ethics communities appears to have a lower demand for aged care service due to a strong family bonds and cultural traditions of caring for elders at home. Wow, it is true that Asian and ethics families deeply value caring for elders. But I want to make it very clear, that does not mean that we don't need the aged care service. The real issue is that many existing services do not meet our cultural needs. Language barrier, food preference, cultural practice, and expectation around families' involvement are often overlooked. As a result, seniors and family may hesitate to access service that simply do not feel appropriate or welcoming. Aged care service must be culturally appropriate, inclusive, and responsive to the diverse communities that make up modern New Zealand. Supporting ethnic seniors is not a special request. It is part of delivering effective care for all. It is time for us to act now, to do better, to be better for our seniors. They can live the quality of life they deserve. As I conclude, Christmas is just around the corner. This is a time of reflection, gratitude, and connection. I urge every single of you here to spend time with your loved one, especially our seniors, our elders. Show them the love, the respect, and the care they deserve. Don't wait until it is too late to say thank you. To all our seniors, we see you, we value you, and we own you more. And I want to wish every single one of you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
Reuben Davidson.
Madam Speaker, thank you, Madam Speaker. It's great to be able to rise and raise some issues on the special debate on the quality of life for ageing New Zealanders. It is the last day of sitting for this House for the year, but hopefully that doesn't mean that this is the lowest priority, because it absolutely, as the previous speaker alluded to at the end of his contribution then, should be a priority for all New Zealanders, especially but not limited to this time of year when it's an opportunity to reconnect with our family. Now, at the heart of the quality of life for ageing New Zealanders is digital inclusion, because it should be a right, not a privilege, for all New Zealanders. We have the potential of a very exciting digital future in New Zealand. AI, artificial intelligence, offers huge opportunities for increased productivity, but also for better, more targeted, more specific access to screening and services for New Zealanders. We are also in the midst of a debate in New Zealand around a social media age restriction, which in fact has highlighted a number of issues around how online services can be better targeted, better tailored, better designed to be safer for New Zealanders of all ages. And I have also, in the Labour Party, talked about proactive steps we're taking to address needs in the primary healthcare sector, to relieve pressure in our hospital sector, which we know is struggling to keep up, with the addition of a Medicard, which allows New Zealanders to have much better record of the medical services they are entitled to, the medical screenings and services that they've already had, and makes sure that it's a Medicard New Zealanders take out of their pocket when they go to the doctor, not a credit card. But we do know on the subject of credit cards that digital devices cost money and that connectivity to the services that digital devices provide access to also costs money. It's summed up very well by the message from Access Matters Aotearoa's Kōrero for Change, where they say technology has the power to connect, empower and transform lives, but only if it is designed with everyone in mind. And that is the risk that we see from a government whose main drive seems to be about cuts and cost cutting and trying to pull money out of very, very important places like our health sector. That design, fueled by that, risks leaving people behind. Some speakers from the other side of the House have raised the issue of social isolation and exclusion, a very real concern for our older New Zealanders, that they do not have access to those services, or if they do have access to those services, that's at the expense of their engagement and their inclusion in community activities and in community conversations that are so important to address those issues of social isolation and exclusion. So the call to government is simple. Our senior sector, our ageing New Zealanders, need to be actively involved in the design and development of the platforms, of the tools, of the potential fantastic opportunities that technology provides. But if we do not involve our older New Zealanders, our ageing New Zealanders, in the design and development of those products and services, we absolutely risk excluding them from the benefits. Digital inclusion is key. Data security and transparency is absolutely vital as well. Trust needs to be central to the services that are provided for our ageing New Zealanders and for all New Zealanders on those digital platforms. And the good news is that there are many experts that the government can work with in this space. And I'm going to name some, but not all of them here. Katoa Connect, the Digital Inclusion Alliance Aotearoa, Moana Connect, the incredible team at Fibre Whale, the Digital Equity Coalition Aotearoa, and a shout out especially to Senior Net in New Brighton, Phyllis and the amazing team there who ensure that some of our older members of our community are still connected, because as technology advances, our community can only advance if we leave no one behind.
The time for this debate has expired. Members, we now come to the debate reflecting on local issues arranged by the Business Committee under Standing Order 80. Would some honourable member care to move that the House take note of local issues?
Move.
Dana Kirkpatrick.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. What a privilege it is to speak to this local issues debate on the final day of the House sitting in 2025. It has been a whirlwind year on the East Coast, and there's been a lot on. But I want to speak about what has been achieved by this government in the East Coast electorate and what announcements we've made to address some of the key issues we faced as an East Coast community. Also, as a number of small and isolated rural communities across a vast and diverse landscape. We forget too easily what has been done, and I think it's time to reflect on a great year of work. I did a quick add up of the money spent announced in and around the electorate, and it runs into hundreds of millions of dollars, possibly billions. This is good news, of course, for the regions of Tairāwhiti and the Eastern Bay of Plenty. But the real question, Madam Speaker, is what does it add? What does it usefully bring? Does it bring solutions that enable productivity and growth? Will it create jobs? Will it support communities and whānau? Firstly, I want to acknowledge all of the social sector agencies across the East Cape electorate this next year, who deliver essential support throughout the region. They do very challenging and difficult work across there, and it's wonderful to see them always smiling and happy. But also, Madam Speaker, infrastructure is the backbone of our regional economy. Roading projects aren't just about safer roads and cyclone recovery, they're about unlocking growth.
When freight routes are resilient and efficient, forestry and farming exports move faster, costs drop and productivity rises, Madam Speaker. So on State Highway 35 and State Highway 2, there are many, many projects, big and small, running into the hundreds of millions of dollars. And I want to acknowledge all those local contractors who've contributed to the work and have gained valuable experience and capability by doing so. That strengthens their own businesses going forward. A small group of people have lobbied hard to ensure that local businesses are used wherever possible, none more so than their inimitable Willie Te Aho. Madam Speaker, the work on the roads in Tairāwhiti and on the Eastern Bay of Plenty includes the Hikawai Bridge, $50 million project, the Mangahauini Gorge, $50 million, Rotatahi Raising, the Nisbets Dip, the Coates Corner projects, 170 dropout sites and culverts fixed at a cost of $90 million, Tineroto Bypass, $45 million, and bridge replacements, $107 million. If you add into that the Waikari Gorge, which is not really in my electorate, it's in the good electorate of my colleague Katie Nimmin, MP for Napier, but it is the one route south for anyone from Tairāwhiti, $400 million, brings that total to almost $1 billion spent in roading and infrastructure, because we also have to add in the Eastern Bay projects, the Matikirapu roundabout, $10 million, the Ohiwa Beach Road State Highway 2 intersection, $10 million, and the Pikatahi Bridge, the greatest project released this week, $69 million, Madam Speaker. Every dollar we invest today in these infrastructure projects creates jobs, strengthens supply chains, builds a future where prosperity is shared across Tairāwhiti and the Eastern Bay of Plenty. One of the real challenges in my community has been housing. High rents, short supply of quality housing available for rent and social housing, and a growing concern about homelessness, and that's shared across the country. There have been a number of housing projects already completed in the last 2 years in Whakatane, Aotearoa and Tairāwhiti, but in May the government announced $49 million of funding into a partnership with all the local iwi, a total of $80 million project it is, to build 150 homes. A much-needed Crown and iwi project which made all of us very proud to be there that day. And just a couple of weeks ago, Minister Chris Bishop announced a further large investment into housing in the electorate. It's clear, he said, that the East Coast has widespread unmet housing need, with more than 700 people on the housing register, one of the highest in the country. Good work coming for Kawerau, Whakatane, Aotearoa and Gisborne, where more than between 210 and 230 social houses and affordable rentals will be delivered in Gisborne and the Eastern Bay of Plenty. Critical to cultural support on the East Coast has been a project that we've been very proud to do this year, $50 million, Madam Speaker, to shift 5 marae out of flood zones onto safer and higher ground. We all know the contribution that marae bring, particularly in times of crisis. We only need to look at the work of the small community of Kutarere near Aotearoa in the Aotearoa flooding just recently. These marae to be shifted, 2 of which I have connections to, Takipu and Rangatira at Tekaraka, and the others, Mangatuna, Pukitawai and Okuri, were inundated in Cyclone Gabrielle. They're all being shifted and will continue to be the heart of their local communities as a result. The Rangatira Marae Trust just had an interment ceremony at the weekend to honour their whare te whakaho, their whenua and their tupuna. Sadly, I missed it because I was still on the way home from urgency, but I understand it was a wonderful ceremony and I congratulate them on that. Health and access to health services has always been an issue in isolated and remote communities, and I acknowledge the work being done in places like Kawerau, Murupara, Aotearoa and Te Kaha, including Omaio and Waiho Bay, for their undying commitment to delivering high-quality health services. I think we still have a way to go for rural and isolated rural health, but I'm pleased that Te Whatu Ora is working with those communities to understand how they can help them better. And I'd just like to also note that in the last year we stood up the urgent and emergency care facility at Puhikaiti in Gisborne to help with after-hours care, to take some pressure off the ED department at Tairāwhiti Hospital. In the Eastern Bay of Plenty, the priority has been the return of secondary maternity services, which is expected in April next year. In Whakatane this year, we supported the Waiariki Whānau Mentoring Resilience Cafe to deliver extended services to help with mental health conversations, a much supported kaupapa in Whakatane as it supports people in times of need and it gets things done. I have so much respect for the people who work at Waiariki Whānau Mentoring. I have admiration for the whānau there, their personal life experiences, which are which are sometimes harrowing, but their resilience and ability to change not only their lives for the better, but therefore help others change their own lives is one of the most incredible things to watch. In terms of economic productivity, there are two other investments I want to mention. Firstly, our regional airlines, Air Chathams and Sun Air, which provide lifelines across our remote region, will receive assistance from the Regional Infrastructure Fund in the form of $30 million in loan availability. We all know that reliable air services are critical for the East Coast economy and regional connectivity. None of us want to see further cuts to flights or, worse than that, total withdrawal of services. So I'd like to thank the Good Minister, Honourable James Meagher, for his assistance. He also helped, Madam Speaker, in the other investment, the $5 million into Eastland Port, to provide container shipping capability at the port in Gisborne. This is transformational for the economic sectors in Tairāwhiti, including wood processing, kiwi fruit and produce exports, and it provides the ability for investors to bring new innovation and development into the region. Every investment, Madam Speaker, that we make in bridges, ports, airlines strengthens the heartbeat. It helps our producers get goods to market faster and more efficiently. When freight routes like State Highway 2 and State Highway 35, when ports and airlines are resilient, producers spend less on transport, more on growth and innovation. It means higher productivity, stronger margins, more jobs in our communities. Our farmers and orchardists are world class. They produce food and fibre that feed families here and overseas, and we have backed them, Madam Speaker, with modern infrastructure, reduction in red and green tape, and smart regional planning. We're ensuring their success for generations to come, fixing the basics and building the future. There are so many projects to list, I couldn't fit them all in this speech. I did a little flowchart thing here. There were way too many to get into this speech, so we had to put that over there. There are so many projects, but I couldn't fit them all. I'm pleased that by combining more than many $1 million of investment, hundreds of millions, in housing infrastructure, cultural heritage and trade. These initiatives are creating thousands of jobs, enhancing safety and laying the groundwork for a much more prosperous future for our community. Finally, so many people as well and organisations I wanted to mention here, but just not enough time to give it due credibility. Please know that all of those organisations I have visited over this year remain an important part of the advocacy work and the work of a good electoral representative MP. There is nothing more important than taking the frontline issues and making sure our people across the region are heard. I want to make a special mention of those people who do not get a break over Christmas, the emergency workers, Hatu Hone St John, firemen, police officers, doctors, nurses, crisis workers. You are all in our thoughts this holiday season. Thank you for your service and commitment to our people. And also, one more mention to those particularly wonderful volunteers in Opotiki and Matata, who deliver fatigue stops on New Year's Day, when the rest of us are all suffering at home. For all of those young people, and some not so young, travelling from Gisborne's Rhythm and Vines to further parts of the country. It is a commendable task, and I know those who stop off are extremely grateful. Madam Speaker, the greatest gift you can give at Christmas time is time. If everybody gives someone who needs it a little bit of time, it goes a very long way to supporting them and making Christmas a better place for everybody. And I commend everybody who would like to possibly do that for someone they maybe have never met before. It makes a big difference. Thanks to the businesses and the whānau in my community, it's been a wonderful year and bring on 2026.
Thank you. Now, the Labour Party have indicated this is a split call, so I call on Honourable Carmel Sepuloni.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I just wanted to start off by acknowledging all of our NGOs across the country that are working hard at this time of year with the many families that are struggling to make ends meet, with the many families that wouldn't otherwise be able to put food on the table over the Christmas period, that wouldn't otherwise be able to afford presents for their children, Madam Speaker. And I particularly want to acknowledge one of these NGOs that I was able to go and visit with some other Labour MPs on Monday, an NGO that has worked really well across different administrations with national governments, with Labour governments, with different political parties, and that organisation is Vision West in Glen Eden. They put on a Christmas from the Heart event each year. This year they will be giving out 1,000 packages to whānau. which includes not only a ready-packed food package, but the ability for them to go and choose some of the items off the shelf themselves, and also includes the ability to be able to select presents off the shelf for their children. The vast majority of what they have has been donated by the New Zealand Food Network, by companies and organisations and businesses, and also from the local schools who, like my son who's at intermediate in that area, did a drive to take Christmas presents along to contribute to that particular Christmas from the Heart effort. But Madam Speaker, despite the fact that I want to acknowledge all of their efforts, I primarily want to acknowledge how tough families are doing it right now. And when we were there, they talked to us about the fact that there are so many working families that are coming through the door now, households that have 2 working parents that can barely pay the rent, let alone the electricity bill, and that struggle to put food on the table and wouldn't otherwise be able to afford anything else for their children at this time. And reflecting on that, I have to say to that side of the House, there is a high level of disappointment that you have not delivered on the promise that you made before the last election. And that was to alleviate the pressure on these families with the cost of living. What we've seen is that inflation has continued to go up, that their incomes have not gone up to the same extent. We've got a government that has made the decision 2 years in a row, was it 3 years in a row, to not even lift the minimum wage to keep up with inflation. And so some responsibility has to be taken from that side of the House for the struggles that these families are going through. And it's not just families with children. There's an increasing number of senior citizens who are struggling to be able to pay for the basics, who are reliant on organisations like Vision West for support at this time of year, Madam Speaker. And I want us all to reflect on that. You know what I don't think? I do not think that any politician in this House is heartless. I do believe that we care about those living in poverty and that there will be families out there that have very little to celebrate at this time of year. But what I also think is that unfortunately, we've got a government who have chosen to prioritise the wrong things. And it's not those families who are experiencing hardship across the course of the year and particularly at this time of year. We've also got a government who is out of touch with that experience. Now, I want to recognise that on all sides of the House, there will be MPs who grew up across the course of their life and probably experienced some hardship themselves. But sadly, what we know is that there are people who seem to forget what that feels like and forget that they have a responsibility to put the ladder out for others, to give back and to ensure that the next generation has a better experience than what some of us in this House may have had. And so, Madam Speaker, today I'm talking about Vision West and Glen Eden in my electorate, but I'm acknowledging every single NGO that is doing it tough themselves with very little funding, looking after whānau who are doing it incredibly tough with the cost of living. And Madam Speaker, I want to acknowledge them and their volunteers and all those making an effort to make this a better time of year for those whānau than it otherwise would have been.
Honourable Kieran McAnulty.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I want to start my contribution to the local debate, given that this is the last opportunity that I'll be speaking this year, to acknowledge everyone that works here at Parliament that enables us to be able to do what we need to do. Their roles are vast and there are many of them and they all work incredibly hard, and so I wanted to acknowledge their contribution to what is an essential part of our democracy. Now, of course, one of the challenges with a local debate is to identify one thing to talk about. You've got 5 minutes and there are a lot of things that are facing our regions at the moment. I'm conscious of the community of Ashurst, which has struggled since the government pulled their school bus services to get their kids to school in Palmerston North, and I'm looking at those that are working tirelessly to help those in Masterton that have found themselves homeless, and the numbers continue to grow under this government. But the one thing that I really want to focus on today, Madam Speaker, is Whatarapa Hospital. And the situation that the government has put that hospital in and our region in is frankly nothing short of a scandal. Now, a brief history before I continue. Whatarapa Hospital was deemed to be structurally unsound. It is not fit for purpose. And it is so bad that Health New Zealand sought $90 million in damages to completely replace the hospital. The only course of action they had available to them was to sue the Marsden District Council, who was essentially the last person standing in this. The contractors and everybody else involved were unable to be joined into that action, and they settled out of court. I have never once sought to find out how much that settlement was, but it is clear from the course of action that Health New Zealand has taken that Masterton Hospital is not safe and is not large enough to meet the needs of our region, and it needs to be fixed. Health New Zealand settled out of court, and we have spent the last year and a bit trying to find out from the Minister where that money has gone. We accept that the settlement is confidential, but one facet of democracy that this government has not lived up to is transparency and integrity, and it is a basic question to ask of ministers: where have they spent the money? Simeon Brown has refused at every opportunity to answer that question. We have long suspected it's because he's taken that money and he has used it to fill the hole in his health budget. We complained to the Ombudsman, they looked into it, and they finally agreed and forced Health New Zealand to answer that question. And now we know for a fact why Simeon Brown refused to answer it, because that's exactly what they did. They took the money. We wanted to know how much of that settlement, which was for the sole purpose of fixing our hospital, would be ring-fenced for Masterton Hospital, and the answer is none of it. Absolutely none of it. So here we are in Whatarapa Hospital with incredibly hard-working staff who are understaffed and overworked. The last estimate was that we are 40 nurses short and they are not allowed to hire. So not only are they overworked, but they are working in unsafe conditions that this government got money to fix, and they took it. They took it to fill the hole in their budget. It is shameful, it is deceitful, and it is a genuine scandal. And they try and make noise, but they have nothing to make noise about, because everything I've said is a fact. They have taken the money. They have taken the money that would have given Whatarapa patients a safe and effective hospital to attend, and given our nurses and our doctors and our health professionals a safe working environment. Filling the budget and trying to plug the holes was more important to them than keeping our patients and our health professionals safe. So as they work over Christmas and they treat those who need their help, they know that they will continue to do so next year in a hospital that isn't structurally sound, isn't fit for purpose, and isn't safe. And that is on Simeon Brown, that is on Health New Zealand, and actually it is on Mike Butterick. The local MP has said nothing, not a peep, not a single word about this. He has had constituents get in touch with him. He's ignored them. He has asked no questions. He has made no representations on behalf of Whatarapa. It is a disgrace, and it is on each and every single one of them for voting for a budget that had $1 billion hole in their health budget, that they had to steal our money for our hospital for their purposes.
That's right. Chloe Swarbrick.
Madam Speaker, almost a decade ago, Now, I fell down a rabbit hole that led me to this place. Almost a decade ago, I was working at Neck of the Woods on Karangahape Road. I was in the midst of opening a little art gallery and coffee shop in order to support our young local creatives. And I was on 95 BFM, the #1 alternative radio station in Auckland. And Madam Speaker, I spent a long time, years in fact, interviewing politicians that I simply could not understand. I could not understand the disconnect between the things that they were saying and doing and the very clearly expressed needs of our communities. So, Madam Speaker, challenged by my then producer, I ended up throwing my hat into the ring and ultimately landing in this place. Madam Speaker, Auckland Central is a place that is not wanting for talent, for creativity, for innovation, nor for care. Our communities deeply and profoundly care about each other, especially in the face of the issues that have been exacerbated by this government's intentional decisions. Madam Speaker, those structural barriers to people achieving their aims, their vision, their desire for contributing to our communities and living a good life look like the kinds of so-called difficult choices that this government has made. Difficult choices like tax cuts for landlords on their 7th rental property while choosing to push more people into poverty and homelessness, which we have consistently challenged the Prime Minister to come to the streets of Auckland Central to meet the people, including the children who his government's decisions have made homeless. Thus far, those calls for him to confront the consequences of his actions have fallen on deaf ears, and now we hear that the government is moving to criminalise the consequences of its own actions. Difficult choices, Madam Speaker, like the government choosing to freeze hiring for the health sector at the front line, which they still continue to say is not happening. Yet, if you are to listen to the very nurses and the doctors and those involved in the healthcare system, very clearly reflects their experience, namely at the likes of Auckland Hospital, just across the bridge from that very Karangahape Road that I was referring to earlier. Those difficult choices, Madam Speaker, to freeze those frontline hires contrasted quite strongly with the government's decision to find $12 billion down the back of the couch for new military spending at the behest of none other than Donald Trump. And then this government has the gall to speak about hard work being rewarded as they make decisions to create the rules of an economy that reward speculation, and they sell this country off for parts. So my question to members of the government is, have any of you actually worked hospo? Because that indeed is an incredibly difficult job to do, and one which, if you want to talk about hard work, should support those who are doing that incredibly challenging work. Madam Speaker, when I talk to my small businesses in Auckland Central, they will consistently raise the challenges with people's lack of discretionary income, which again comes as a result of this government's intentional decisions to punch down on hard-working, regular people. And then this government's response to all of that, Madam Speaker, is to make those small businesses internalise the cost of pay wave instead of the commercial banks who consistently are making record profit. The point that I am making here, Madam Speaker, is that all of these decisions, which are about our country, ultimately end up impacting all of us locally. And while we need to build the power at a grassroots level to build up towards that political change at a central government level, well, Madam Speaker, this is why it is so important for New Zealanders from Auckland Central to across Aotearoa to understand that the power rests in their hands and that they should not let the people who are laughing their way to the bank, screwing those hardworking New Zealanders over, define the terms of what is possible in our politics. Because, Madam Speaker, back to those fundamental ingredients in Auckland Central of the care and the compassion and the creativity and the innovation. Those could be unleashed if we decided as a House of Parliament to create the rules that enabled them to flourish instead of punching down on them as this government's decisions so consistently do.
Cameron Luxon.
Look, local body elections don't always get the attention like general elections do. They don't dominate the radio, they don't clog up the news coverage. But in 2025, what happened in local government matters more than many people think, because councils have a growing influence over the cost of living, local infrastructure and our daily lives. And I want to thank the people who this year put themselves forward to stand for local bodies. Standing for council is not always glamorous, Madam Speaker. Standing for council is demanding. It involves real personal sacrifice, family commitment. Yet across the country, good people, business owners, parents, professionals, farmers and community leaders have stepped forward because they care deeply about their community. A strong democracy relies on people who are prepared to serve, and whether they win or lose, those candidates who stood deserve our respect for putting their names forward and engaging with the democratic process. At this year's local election, for the first time, ACT made the deliberate and organised effort to contest local government through the ACT Local campaign. That decision was driven by a simple belief: local government should focus on the basics, spend ratepayers' money carefully, and be accountable to the people who fund it. ACT Local candidates stood on clear principles. They argued that councils should concentrate on core services like roads, water and waste, stick to essential infrastructure rather than expanding into areas better handled by community organisations or that are the purview of central government. ACT Local candidates stood for lower rates, fiscal restraint, transparency and back to basics common sense decision making. Importantly, ACT Local candidates didn't pretend that local government is apolitical. Councils make real choices about spending, regulation and the way our future in our communities and our cities will be decided. ACT believes voters deserve clarity about the values and the ideas that councils bring to these decisions. In 2025, we succeeded, ACT Local succeeded, in electing representatives across the country. These newly elected councillors are carrying out the responsibility of delivering on those promises, standing up for ratepayers, asking tough questions of the council, refocusing the council on what really matters. Their presence has already shifted the tone of the local debate, bringing stronger scrutiny and clearer accountability to council chambers. But while there is much to be encouraged by, particularly the quality of candidates, not just in ACT Local but around the country, and the ideas on offer, there is one issue that lingers and it is large, and regardless of politics, we should be paying attention to it. It deserves our consideration, and that is voter turnout. Once again, participation in local government elections has been concerningly low. In many parts of the country, little more than a third of eligible voters took part, and in some communities, turnout was even lower than that. That means decisions affecting entire cities and districts are being made with a minority mandate. This isn't a new problem, but it's a pattern which must improve. When turnout is low, it's a warning that councils have become disconnected from their communities they serve, and good people may decide it's simply not worth standing in future elections. Democracy becomes weaker, not because of bad intentions, but because of disengagement. Engagement is crucial at local government, because this is the level of government that affects our daily lives. We are a self-governing society, and partaking in the democratic process is what is the cornerstone of that system. Councils decide how much we pay in rates. They decide where the roads are maintained, where the water infrastructure is upgraded. They control how quickly a consent is issued and how, as I say, our towns and cities will grow. That is why turnout must improve. New Zealanders say again and again that we want councils that focus on core services, that respect ratepayer money and know the value of that dollar. And this must be delivered. Voting isn't just a formality. It's how we signal what we expect from those who govern locally. In the 2025 local elections, there was a call for good candidates who stood up. ACT Local showed that good ideas and principles matter at the local level. Now the challenge is for our system to prove its responsiveness, to prove why there is value in voters being engaged. Madam Speaker, this country is made up of neighbours and neighbourhoods, living together and advancing New Zealand. Local democracy is a pillar of how we do this. Thank you.
Andy Foster.
Madam Speaker, I'm delighted that you're in the chair because I rise on behalf of New Zealand First to speak as a List MP about one of my recent visits to the West Coast. And it's a place, Madam Speaker, as you would know, I see the big smile there, of wonderful people, of strong communities, of rich and often tragic history, and of deep connection to a place which is utterly beautiful. The West Coast, Madam Speaker, was seen, as you know, of many bloody battles. I visited Mawhera, a part of the Pounamu pathways, which I think was supported by PGF, and saw the confronting interpretation of Ngāi Tahu's repeated brutal invasions and ultimate eradication of the local iwi. It's pretty confronting stuff. And then for a while, in the 19th century, the West Coast was home to more than 10% of New Zealand's entire population. What was the reason for both of those? It was mining, Pounamu and gold. Mining was also a big part of my visit, and I was told that one mining job on the coast creates more than 3 across the whole community, and it's also by far the highest value per capita of any job in any sector. I visited Endura Gold Mine on the Snowy River near Reefton. They started in 2020 and already they have drilled 12 kilometres of tunnel. It looks really, really promising in terms of fact they're really certain of the resource that's down there, and they're now about to start investing $80 million in a processing plant. Now, Labor often bemoans losing construction jobs, and I suspect mining jobs to Australia. But what did I see there? Australians coming back and working in the Snowy River mine. And one other thing I did note there was that the key investor in the mine was the super fund, the Australian super fund. Reefton, I visited Reefton as well. I love this town. When we had the flag referendum on, I saw one Kyle Lockwood flag in the street, and the rest of it was festooned with New Zealand flags. Now, this was a great place. But New Zealand is not only proud of being a New Zealand, Reefton's not only proud of being a New Zealand town, it's also proud of being the first town in the Southern Hemisphere to have electrified street lights. And I also visited the Powerhouse Trust, which has restored some of that power system that ran it, and is now selling 1.8 megawatts of energy back to the grid. And then there was Blackball. Now here's a town that was down on its luck, a mining town again. It was a community that was really struggling, but was turned around with a bit of support, including from Internal Affairs. The community has led that restoration. They've focused on celebrating their history and telling the fascinating stories of that place. The first project that the community decided it wanted to embark on was restoring a mining chimney. And they've also restored a community hall, heritage buildings, erected a replica of an aerial cableway pylon that used to take the coal, and some of the kids hopped on the coal and told those stories. Coal, yes. And so they're telling the stories of those places. There was an outdoor museum display interpreting the birthplace of the Labor Party out of the strike action originally in 1908. Got to say, they're not feeling a whole lot of love from the Labor Party over recent years. What happened? It also reflected on the Pike River disaster. Madam Speaker, Blackball is clearly a town which is recovering. It's attracting new residents and businesses, and you can see and feel the pride and care for the town, its buildings and its structures. And it's a great example, I think, of supporting and empowering a community to get on and develop their own future. And then there was West Coast Mineral Sands. Now they are mining mineral sands near Westport, and they've got consented plans for another site south of Hokitika. They started with a paddock. First soil turn just 3 years ago, December 2022. First exports mid-2023, and they're now exporting 120,000 tonnes of product a year. They're looking, Madam Speaker, we often talk about value add. They're looking to add very significant value by separating those mineral sands, so it's not just treated as low-value construction sand. So what do they produce there? Zircon, that's used in ceramics, mouldings for factories, etc. Titanium, used in medical products, jet engines and paint. Garnet, water jet cutting, and can also be used on roadways and airport runways to add grip and life for road surfaces and road paint. And then there's all those rare earths used in magnets essential for EVs, wind turbines and touch phones. So a clear example where mining is actually helping us to become more sustainable. Their vision is to become an intergenerational business. They've got about 70 staff at the moment. The aim is 200 to 300 in the Bulla, and then Hokitika another 70 odd. But I want to touch finally on one last thing before also saying West Coast Development West Coast, who I spend a lot of time with there, doing an absolutely fantastic job, both supporting development on the coast, but also building the fund that they got, which was 92 million back in 2002, I think it was, 2012, sorry, and it's now worth 150 million plus all the investment they've made. But it's the future of the Landcorp site there, which the West Coast Mineral Sands are doing a lot of their mining. We talk about, there's been some talk about selling Landcorp. We obviously don't support that at all, but that site is really, really important, not only for West Coast Mineral Sands, but also potentially for the future of Westport and the potential of any relocation. It's really essential that we don't sacrifice those opportunities. And Madam Speaker, I think we need to stand alongside the West Coast community. Both our government agencies and New Zealand First certainly stands alongside the West Coast and its potentially prosperous future.
E te pika. E te pika today marks my 70th day as the Member of Parliament for Tāmaki Makaurau, and I've been saving this kaupapa kōrero for this very moment. It's my gift to the House before it rises for 2025, and in presenting this gift I honour Takutai. You see, it was Takutai who started this hikoi for Te Pāti Māori, and it is with her in mind that I stand here proudly to give rise to the voices of our rangatahi. Specifically, I give rise to the most vulnerable rangatahi in Tāmaki Makaurau, who are living with real, genuine fear from not knowing where they're going to sleep tonight, tomorrow night, or even on Christmas Day next Thursday. Housing remains the most urgent, pressing issue in Tāmaki Makaurau, but homelessness, it is the gift that keeps on giving. The numbers have gone up, not down, and the latest figures tell us that more than 112,000 people across Aotearoa are without shelter and seriously deprived of a stable home right now. Just the other day, the Salvation Army reported homelessness has more than doubled in Tāmaki Makaurau in the past year alone, rising from 426 to 940. How is that possible, Madam Speaker, that the richest city in our country also carries the shame of the worst homelessness crisis? What's worse is that 50% of all of those who are homeless right now are under the age of 25. Madam Speaker, that's too close to home for me. My mātāmua, my eldest child, is 25. For any mama and kuia out there, it's gut-wrenching and heartbreaking to see tamariki suffer. It is as if they're our own babies. That's just how us mama, Māori mama, tick, that when one of our babies suffer, we all do. Our babies belong to the village, and in this context, when we speak to homelessness, the village is Aotearoa. The recent More Than a Home report commissioned by Māti Huruhuru in collaboration with Manaaki Rangatahi tells us that the urgency of taitamariki homelessness is no longer just a crisis, it is a generational failure. We have to do better. During my by-election campaign, Madam Speaker, I saw things I cannot unsee. I saw a mum pushing a newborn baby in a trolley at 7 a.m. along the Papatoetoe streets. It's become normalised. Māori wardens deal with it every day. I also saw a kuia who had made a makeshift home out of a bus stop on Robertson Road in Mangere. I also saw parents with young children sleeping in their cars across the road from some of our most prominent malls and washing up in public toilets. There are kids that are going to school that are not going to school, not because they choose to or their parents simply don't want them to go to school, but because they can't afford a roof over their heads. What I didn't see, Madam Speaker, is rangatahi homelessness, and I'll tell you why. It's not as obvious, it's invisible. And it is growing in silence. It's growing because $79 million was cut from housing support programs in the last year. It's growing because it's a lot harder for whānau to access emergency housing. It's growing because there is no real investment in mental health and rehabilitation services and addiction services. It's growing because this coalition believes that punishment is better than prevention. It's growing because not one government policy has been designed specifically with rangatahi in mind. And that is the gift that I bring to this whare right now, a strong, solid solution that seeks to solve a long-standing struggle. It aims to break cycles. Today, I deliver my youth homelessness prevention bill into the members' bill ballot. It's not about the crisis, it is about the cure. Prevention is priority, and this bill seeks to create a legal duty to assist, and it ensures that not one rangatahi falls through the gaps. It places onus on agencies and mandates transparent reporting. It is not a radical approach, it is a responsible bill. Wales and Canada have done it, Madam Speaker. They reduced youth homelessness while saving public money. My bill is not ideological, it is evidence-based, rangatahi-centred and community-led. It provides real transformation, but it does require courage, leadership and collaboration. This government is proof that the unthinkable is thinkable. This government is proof that the unimaginable can become reality. So I implore everyone in this house, while they go away for Christmas break and celebrate the festive season, that they hold in their minds and hearts the future of our nation. It does require rangatira, and rangatira must be raised by the village of Aotearoa. Rangatira become who they are by rangatahi. Kia ora.
Vanessa Wenig. Speaker. Last night this House had the first readings of 3 pieces of legislation that will have transformational effects in my electorate of Banks Peninsula. The planning, natural environment and the earthquake-prone building bills will have profound impacts in not only Christchurch and the South Island but also the whole of New Zealand. And in some ways I feel really deeply connected to all of these pieces of legislation because of my prior experiences before coming to Parliament. So last night I talked about how during the earthquakes I was at the Pine Gould building. I led the triage team there, and while everybody who came through our triage tent actually survived, there were many other people who perished in that building, and I know that all of the other first responders who were in that building also hold those memories of those images of that place, and the emotional impact of that earthquake on everybody who was in Christchurch has been huge. The physical devastation was just almost unimaginable, but every person who was there in Christchurch has got a connection to how we responded as well. And I think it's difficult to understand if you haven't been in an emergency situation, if you haven't lived through a crisis and responded. I know Dana and others who have been involved in cyclones and other things know what it's like to have a community response. And so when I stood next to that building that was a concertinaed collapsed building off the back spine of the elevator and stairway shaft at the back, it was pretty hard to imagine what it must have been like to have had to have been in that building after the first lot of earthquakes, because in September that building had been checked. And the previous year, when we had our first lot of earthquakes, that building had been checked and deemed safe enough for people to go back into. And so for the families of those victims and those survivors, and also the families from the devastating loss of the big smoking pile of rubble that was the CTV building, to go through the later response and then the Royal Commission of Inquiry into the buildings and how that and what needed to happen was both re-traumatising, but also, I think, somewhat affirming in the findings and the recommendations that came out of it. And at the time, I remember feeling such a huge sense of relief that this Parliament had responded and agreed to all of the findings of that Royal Commission. But when we get 15 years down the track, we see that actually, in some ways, we're faced with a triage situation. In medicine, when you have a mass casualty situation, you have to triage, you have to do what you can for the most to get the best survival outlook. And what our earthquake-prone buildings legislation is doing is essentially taking what is thousands of buildings across the country that would have been deemed unsafe and not able to be used, and finding a practical way to be able to make safe as many of those as possible in a way that is pragmatic and means that it actually gets done. And to the families of all of those who lost their lives, I want them to be assured that this is not about the money, and I'm not talking about the money, you'll notice that deliberately, although it is billions of dollars, because actually when it comes down to it, this is a pragmatic government that is taking the steps that we need to do. Now, one of those buildings in my electorate is actually Princess Margaret Hospital, and that is something that we need to do something about, yes, absolutely. And I think that the earthquake-prone building and as well as that, the planning and environment bills will help go some ways to getting there. We need to be able to come up with some advice. Many people have asked me what we're going to do with that. The answer is we don't know yet, and I want to take the electorate along with me on that journey to figure out and help to advocate for what will be the best outcome, because the worst outcome would be if it sat as a mouldering pile of bricks, attracting adventurers and vandals and rats. So I hope that we can use those to move forward for Banks Peninsula.
Madam Speaker.
Honourable Ginny Anderson.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I'd like to use my call today to talk about homelessness in the Hutt Valley. Mark is 47. Mark grew up in Nainai, and he went to Hutt Valley High School. He worked for many years as a builder in a small firm. When that firm folded after the recent downturn in construction work, he took up work as a casual labourer. He sustained a back injury and then received ACC support for some time. When ACC stopped, he used his savings up pretty quickly, and he then went on job seeker. But the job seeker amount was insufficient to be able to pay for his rent and for food. So he moved in with his sister in Wainuiamata and slept on her couch. The house was already pretty crowded with 4 or 5 children in there already. He felt like he was a burden on that family, and so he decided to move on. He initially slept in his car and moved around the Hutt Valley to find places to sleep. But with a back injury, he was in a lot of pain sleeping in his car. He got a tent and camped in some areas in and around the Hutt Valley, an industrial space he found, but he felt unsafe. So some nights he just stayed awake in order to feel more safe. Mark isn't on the street because of drugs or crime. He's there because rent went up faster than his income. His injury took away steady work, and he could not access emergency housing at all. Madam Speaker, in this very House, we have been told numerous times by the Prime Minister, Christopher Luxon, by the Minister for Housing, Christopher Bishop, and by the Associate Minister of Housing, Tama Potaka, that if people need housing support, it is there for them. Mark is one of many examples right across New Zealand where that is not true, and people cannot access the help and the support they need. People might remember a recent Radio New Zealand article about the Hutt Valley again, someone living in their car, this time on the Petone foreshore. His name was Dylan Holdaway, and he was renowned for that quote because he was living off tin chicken in his car. He was working as a vinyl layer, so working and living in his car. And he I think struck a chord with many Kiwis because he said that a working man should be able to afford a steak. After a day's work, I should be able to buy a steak. And he could not afford to put decent food into his body and was getting sick as a consequence. Only when that story broke on Radio New Zealand, Madam Speaker, and when it was picked up on social media, and it got fed around and went pretty hard out in the Hutt, that story, only when that story broke did Christopher Bishop make a contract be signed for wraparound support enabling some of those homelessness prevention services to have adequate funding to help people in that area, and that's when action was taken. When media stories hit, it was only then that our homelessness prevention service received adequate funding to be able to get in and help people like Mark and like Dylan. That same provider told me that they had to fight with MSD for living in a garage to be a criteria to access homelessness support. Previously, if you were living in a garage, that was okay, that was a house. So that provider who had already gone in and fought hard for that funding to be secured to help these people had to fight for living in a garage to be added as a criteria to access that support. I am told that if you are a mum with kids, you need an eviction notice, and that the Homelessness Prevention Service in the Hutt Valley and MSD will be able to provide support to that family once they have an eviction notice. And I see them laughing on the other side at their phone, so I'm pleased someone thinks that's funny. 5 people a week in the hut are homeless. 5 people a week, and that's going to go up over the Christmas period as more pressure comes on families. In the meantime, our social housing build has been cancelled in the Hutt Valley. People deserve to have jobs, health and homes, Madam Speaker. Jobs give people dignity and purpose. Health services get people back on their feet, and homes provide the foundation that makes everything possible. We are serious about addressing homelessness. We will give people secure work that they can rely on, accessible healthcare when things go wrong, and also affordable homes in the communities they live in. When people have a job, when people have their health, and people have a place to call home, they don't just survive, they have a future, and that's what the Labour Party stands for.
Madam Speaker.
Cole Bates.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for this opportunity to speak at the end of what has been another year of this government working for provincial and regional New Zealand so that we can fix the basics, Madam Speaker, and build the future. We've heard the opposition rant and rave about challenges, Madam Speaker, that existed when they left office, and unfortunately for New Zealand they did not fix. So let me talk about 3 things that have affected my electorate in recent times, the wonderful Wanganui electorate, that have been a direct result of work this government and, dare I say it, Madam Speaker, this MP, have done in my wonderful, wonderful electorate of Wanganui. Firstly is the earthquake-prone building work, Madam Speaker. The Post had a headline recently and it said, "New earthquake regulations ensure survival of rural New Zealand." You see, Madam Speaker, it is easy to rant and rave. It is more difficult to actually do practical, implementable changes that solve the problem. Madam Speaker, the Wanganui Chronicle on the 2nd of April 2024 said, "The balancing act involved with earthquake strengthening and protecting heritage buildings was on the agenda when Building and Construction Minister Chris Pink visited Wanganui the day prior." Pink said at that time, Madam Speaker, that he will make them more realistic so people could have the practical ability to do the work that was required. Again, Madam Speaker, it is easy to get lost in the technicalities in the story. The things that we've done, like removing the new building standard ratings from the system, removing Auckland, Northland and the Chatham Islands. What we often miss in the process is the reality of the impact of the changes on people and on our communities, on the building owners and on cities like Wanganui. The changes to earthquake strengthening, the Building Earthquake-Prone Buildings Amendment Bill, is about having and ensuring a proportionate and risk-based regulatory system. There's a significant impact when it comes to the dollars. In Wanganui alone, it will have a reduction of savings estimated of about $24 million. For Stratford, a building owner said in the Post again, Madam Speaker, that simplifying of the earthquake-prone building system will take pressure off owners and make selling properties much easier. And the projected savings, Madam Speaker, for the Waireapa, a place that work got done by the local MP to support the implementation or the bill being progressed and coming into this House, something that the prior member who ranted and raved earlier in this debate, Madam Speaker, didn't achieve, is $68 million for Dannevirke, $82 million for Masterton and $17 million for Carterton. I just want to do a shout out to Mike Buttrick, MP for Wairarapa. He's doing a great job there, Madam Speaker, and deserves the support of that region. Madam Speaker, as we talk about heritage buildings, it's a nice segue into the Regional Events Promotion Fund, because in January, Madam Speaker, we will be having Vintage Weekend, the 17th and 18th of January, which is an opportunity to just highlight the backdrop of the heritage buildings we have in Wanganui that benefit from everything I have just spoken about. Along with other events in our region during January, the Goat Adventure Run, the Cook's Classics athletics event and the cemetery circuit, all supported by the Regional Events Promotion Fund. Madam Speaker, I want to jump on finally to the thing that I was referring to. Much is said in this House and around the country of rural and provincial connectivity. I spoke about it in my maiden speech, Madam Speaker. Well, this Friday, Madam Speaker, less than 2 years after my maiden speech, I stand here excited for Christmas in Patea, Madam Speaker, because this Friday we are turning on the tower, Madam Speaker, and unlike the opposition who often focus on the amount of money the government is or isn't spending on something, thinking that dollars always solve the problem, Madam Speaker, this tower is being turned on because of the hard work of the local MP, Bronwyn Waltress, and Jack Dwyer from the local community board, Mayor Phil Nixon, Deputy Mayor Rob Northcote, Madam Speaker. Without a dollar of government money on Friday, we will be turning on the tower in Patea, turning on mobile connectivity and celebrating connection in our electorate. Madam Speaker, I wish you a very Merry Christmas.
Helen White.
Thank you. I want to talk about two different bills and things that are before my electorate at the moment. I represent, and I'm very honoured to represent, the area of Mount Albert. And it is at the present time subject to a plan change, a council plan change called 120. And I have just prepared my submission on that, and submissions are due by the end of the week. But it is also going to be impacted by the Planning Act, and the two are actually interrelated. And so I want to talk about that too. The first thing I want to say is I totally support affordable housing close to the city. And I have found that most residents in my area see why that is so necessary. And I'd just like to refer to the Honourable Ginny Anderson's speech about homelessness, because there is a direct correlation between unaffordable housing and homelessness. There is a lot of myth out there about what makes people homeless, and that is the number one correlating factor. We absolutely need affordable housing. I've lived in the area for 35 years, and I strongly support the majority view that we need to have that housing built. I have prepared a submission, and I will make sure that people in my electorate see it, because it's based on what came back as feedback, and that will go in on Plan Change 120. But today I want to address my concern about the Planning Act. Now, we're supporting the Planning Act at this stage through to the Select Committee, but that doesn't mean that we won't be keeping a close eye and we don't have serious questions to ask, and I don't have those questions to ask on behalf of my community. One thing I'm concerned about is that we have had a plan change that already erodes the character housing protections in my area. And the new Act looks at those character houses and landscape protections in quite a different way. It basically means, from what I can see, that those plan change protections are going to go. That in fact there is no protection around most of that land. So my question will be, what is the interrelationship between them? Do people who think that they are in a plan change process which will secure a lot of those areas in terms of the housing that's there have that security, or is that gone? In fact, are those areas now going to be demolished as a result of the plan change? And what will be protected under this new law? Because from what I can see, there needs to be an outstanding natural feature or landscape, or a significant historic heritage to allow protection under our national law under this Act. And a lot of the areas that people are concerned about in my area are places like, there's an area called Burnley Terrace. It's a street full of character houses, but probably none of them would reach that standard. And so I think it is a very big concern. The second part is of more concern to me, because there's a chilling effect in this law. It looks like what has to happen under this law is that if the council wants to protect something, it will have to compensate compensate the developers to the extent of what they're losing. Now, that actually really concerns me. Does it mean that places like Ferndale House, which are historic buildings, if the council wishes to protect them, if the trust wants to develop that area into high-rise, does it mean that the council would have to pay out in that situation to the extent of a development of a high-rise building? If that's the case, councils won't do it. It will be a chilling effect on any protection of things that the community values. Now, we live in a democracy, and local democracy is a protection of our communities. So it is very important that our communities get to say what's important. And I get very concerned about what I see as the potential of an erosion of the commons, basically the things we all get a say in, the democratic right to participate and to shape your community versus private ownership. I'm worried that this might be an erosion of the commons and actually an attachment to private property owners, a new right and new rights that they've never had before, new property rights. Thank you. I'll be looking closely at this legislation.
Members, I'd just like to acknowledge the contributions in the local issues debate. I found them very informative and at times very heartfelt, so congratulations. But the time has come for this debate to end, and the House stands adjourned until 2 p.m.